Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. And, the purpose of our next half an hour or so is to share with you and introduce to you a group of people who possibly have pursued their passion to create a purpose-driven organization, which I think many of us in India can be very proud of. So to introduce InMobi, what I think we'll do first is possibly to show a video to share with you some context, and then we can introduce Supriya, Pooja, and Kevin, who represent the company. Supriya looks after marketing for Southeast Asia, Pooja is looking after legal, and Kevin looks after HR. So clearly we'll get various perspectives, both from how the business leaders look at creating and executing to their purpose, what the experience is for employees, as well as what are some of the practices put in place. So I'm sure it'll be an interesting conversation. Maybe we can roll the video to start with, and then we can kick off our conversation.
So we just opened up and we had people come up with names. The only condition was come up with a name that has the web address available. People came up with few names. We then opened up for voting. InMobi was number one. Boom, it's there.
When it comes to work, we work very hard, and when it comes to fun, I think we don't shy away to let your hair down and do whatever we want to do.
The idea of fun at InMobi is to give them a greenfield setup to do anything and everything that they can aspire to do. Because believe me, the greatest folks in InMobi don't like to be found. Everyone who's at InMobi is extremely special and deserves to be called as a hero within their own self. And I'm just so proud of is the whole culture that we are able to create within the organization. I look around here and I look around 17 other offices in InMobi, and I see a childlike passion in everyone's face. InMobi has given the industry a lot of people who are experts in mobile.
It is actually good reinforcement from our side that when you do something of this nature, you will be rewarded, you will be recognized.
I think we have an amazing culture. We can feel it. You talk to people, they won't be able to articulate the culture, they won't be able to stitch the story together, but if you ask them and you make them sit down, they will all talk great things about our culture.
At Catalyst 4 years ago, where we said that we should acknowledge the team, the people who have done exceptionally well, and we should just call them on the stage and just tell them that you guys rock.
And it is so important that as founders, we run culture ourselves. We couldn't wait any longer because we were running without money. And we start going out and start talking to the big VCs.
Just don't become an entrepreneur until you have a dream that does not let you sleep. Even today, when I wake up in the morning and we have this report that comes at 7 a.m. which tells us how we did yesterday, I have this childlike fear that the whole business is going to evaporate when I sleep in the night.
So, I opened the Wikipedia page for your company, and I noticed, in 2016 alone, InMobi has been featured in India's top 100 companies to work for. It's ranked number 15 on the world's most innovative companies. It's been honored with the NDTV Indian of the Year award, and it's won a spot in the MIT Technology Review of 50 most disruptive companies. So clearly, you are doing something right. So Supriya, I'm going to start with you, and sort of ask you to sort of reflect a little bit back to what your founders talked about, and what is the vision or the purpose that your company is working towards, which informs your business strategy, and how do you see yourself placed in the markets that you operate in? How does that link to what we just heard, and what has led to the amazing recognitions over the last year that we read about?
Thanks, Prithvi. I'll just start with maybe a minute of what exactly InMobi does and who we are as an organization. So we are the world's largest independent mobile ad network, which means that we are a conduit between advertisers and publishers. When we are saying we're independently the largest, let me give you a little bit of sense of how large we are. So we have about 20 offices across 14 countries. When we started 9 years back, we started with this inception of being the idea of was always about being a global organization. So even though we were headquartered in India, our first few business sort of deals were happening in Southeast Asia, and then we spread to Europe, and then the US, and then China. So it was born as a global company out of India. Now, of course, as things have evolved, today where we stand, 50% of our revenues come from the western part of the world, which is the US and Europe, and 50% of our revenues come from the east, which is China and Southeast Asia and India. So this is the global nature of our business. And why I spoke about this was that one of our founding vision was to be a leading product and technology company based in India, but serving globally, and that's what we've been able to achieve. Another vision dimension which sort of emerged for us over the last 2 years was that we're in the ad business. And often many people here as well, sometimes come back and say that we don't like ads, and we serve ads on a mobile phone. And ads can be disruptive, and we understand that. And therefore, around 2 years back, our vision really became about reimagining advertising and creating ads that people will actually truly love. And all that we've done over the last 2-3 years and where we are today as a business, delivering the kind of ad experiences which put some of our competitors in the big league, that's why we are compared to the big league, is because of that vision that we really want to create ads that people love, that are non-disruptive, and that provide the kind of ROI to both advertisers and publishers, to both spectrums to both ends of the spectrum of our customer value chain.
So if I sort of take what you said and to make that come alive, Kevin, if I can ask you to comment on, you compete with the brands like Google, Apple, and many others, I'm sure, which are household names elsewhere. What is the kind of employee that you really look for? What are the kinds of practices that really attract the kind of people who can deliver to some of the vision that Supriya mentioned?
So can I be heard? Yes, great. So when you look at who's applying to us, and the kind of experience that they experience, that's one element. The second is once they come in, what makes them really successful at InMobi, right? So the kind of people who are applying to us is everybody, but the people who really succeed at InMobi are the people who really value freedom. They value the fact that nobody is going to ask them to do something. They can actually decide what they want to do. And that's how our culture has been built. Our culture has been built around what do people do when Naveen is not around? What do people do when your manager is not around? And that's the real essence of our culture. So if you have to find people who are actually going to be most productive in such an environment, then you want to have people who are actually going to make the best use of their time, who actually have an absolute purpose to serve in the time that they are within InMobi. And what are we looking for? We're looking for self-starters. We're looking for people who take risks in their careers, who take risks trying to build something, even if they fail, because you can't succeed all the time. We are looking for people who are always positive. The reason you need to be positive is because it's very tough to fail. It's very tough to fail and come back. And in our organization, We've done it time and time again. So positivity is absolutely, absolutely essential for any employee to be successful, at least at our company. Right? So these are some of the elements that we look at, especially when we are hiring and especially when people walk through our gates and also walk out. So that's what they take away from us as well. And we really, really believe that it's not only about how much we can get out of people, but also how much we give back to our ecosystem. Right? So we're very proud of that.
Pooja, you've been in the company about 5 years or so. We often talk about organizations which have come into India and where the center of gravity is elsewhere. Clearly for InMobi, with operating in multiple countries, you look after a legal function, from India. How does that work? What has your experience been working with in a global environment? Going out of India to work with other geographies. Are there some things that have given you an edge in terms of the performance that you've demonstrated so far from that perspective?
Sure. Am I audible? Yeah, sure. So thank you, Kevin, Supriya, and Prithvi. So I think before I go into that, strictly from an employee perspective, I think it's important to resonate what Guruji said in the last session. It is so much about the gratification of the job, which is something that InMobi offers in buckets. So, like you said, how has it been to operate out of India looking at a global function? Well, it has been fantastic. It has been fantastic not only because advertising per se is an evolving nascent industry with its own challenges and, legally speaking, a completely changing era of laws. Aside of that, it's about how the organization ingrains you with a sense of entrepreneurship, you with a sense of being enabled. So, sitting here, we manage our entire function across the globe, and nobody has to tell us when we need to burn the midnight oil. Nobody is even asking us if we call it quits one day, saying that, guys, job's done early, let's go watch a movie. It's phenomenal. As an employee, it's been about, a little less than 5 years, but I can thumb the table and tell you that I love coming to work. I love coming to work because InMobi lets me grow. The vision is very clear to us as employees. Not only that, as a resource, as a professional, it's incredibly gratifying.
That's nice to hear. I wish there were many such people in many organizations who felt the same way. So I'm going to not hijack or sort of put you on the spot, Kevin. I was looking at Glassdoor,
Right.
And one of the things that a Glassdoor says, there are only about 250 people who've commented on your on InMobi, but they talk about work-life balance. And you're talking about that nobody really people come to work because they want to. How do you balance that off? That there is you have a workforce, I'm sure, which is Supriya was telling me earlier about 26 years average age. What are some of the things? And I saw some of the interesting things in the video, so I must visit your office. But what are the things that you do to balance this ask for work-life balance? Plus resonates with a culture which is, whatever you call it, millennial, Gen Y, whichever culture, and given your mix in your workforce. What are some of the one or two distinctive practices that have sort of really, stood out well for you?
So, when you enter InMobi, and I'll just talk about some of the stuff that people experience. They experience freedom. They just see that there's no security at the gate asking you, who you come to visit. They think that everybody is an employee actually. So don't even ask them for the ID card. It also goes right to your job. The kind of freedom that you experience there, and I'll cite two instances. Sometime in 2014, our internet speed was really, really poor. That's because a lot of people were accessing websites. And these were non-office websites. There was Facebook, there was lots of other things. And the IT team went with a request saying that, should we turn it off? Should we turn off access to these websites? Instead, the response that came from the founders, that came from the exec team, was why don't we get another leased line and increase the bandwidth so that people can access it? right? So the kind of experience that people have is not about controlling what time you come in. We believe that control lies with the employee. The control lies with the Inmobian, actually. It's not to the organization to decide that you need to come in at 10 o'clock and leave at 8. There are organizations that do it because it's fit for purpose. But at Inmobi, at least the purpose that we've discovered is that when you give people freedom in one aspect and you limit it in the others, you're not actually playing through, right? So when we play through, we believe in playing through all ways.
I'm going to add to that. The execs go that extra mile to bring everyone up to speed about the mission and the vision of the company. And I've been with a lot of large companies, mostly, and with due respect to everyone over here, apart from a very small percentage of people, you're nothing more than an email ID there, no matter what you're doing, really. Because of the sheer number of employees that they have. But at Inmobi, they know you, they talk to you, they acknowledge you. And even if they don't know you and you're a person who's just joined, we have a concept called quarterly town hall, where painstakingly each time the founders come, they actually share their vision, they share their strategy, not just to those who need to know, but with everyone, so that everyone is aligned with the vision of the company, where we are really headed. And again, painstakingly answer all kinds of questions. Questions starting from cafeteria to the business goals.
No, that's true. I think, I always say that as organizations grow bigger, I think the challenge of providing context, which makes the purpose come alive for individuals, tends to be put on the back burner. And that's why you have a growing distance between people understanding why they're doing what they're doing. So, life can't be so easy, Supriya. It can't be everything is hunky-dory, employees love everything. I'm sure there have been situations where you've been in conversations with some of your founders or with some of your colleagues where you've had to make hard decisions, as to how do you, because a company that has started in 2007 and to reach the standing that you've reached today cannot be all just a smooth ride. I'm sure there have been lots of ups and downs, difficult decisions about people, difficult decisions about investments, difficult decisions about acquisitions of resources that you don't have or have. How does decision making work in Inmobi? What are some of the things that have enabled that to happen so positively?
So first things first, absolutely right. I think amongst the three of us itself, we've seen multiple ups and downs. It's because of the industry that we are in. It's a very young industry, very quickly evolving. The rules of business are just not laid down. And for example, I'll just give one small example. Competition, like for us, 6 years ago, 6 quarters ago, 6 months ago, keeps changing. And whoever was a big competitor 2 years back doesn't even exist today. So that's how dynamic the industry is, and the rules of the game are still being laid down. So definitely we faced, and because that happens, sometimes you take a bet in a particular direction, and that direction isn't viable anymore, and you have to come back to to a different direction, and that's a hard journey. So for sure we have seen those ups and downs. I'll answer the question just two very simple things which I've seen time and again being done to address this change in direction, difficult decisions. One is honesty, and sometimes I would say it's brutal honesty. The brutal honesty with which I've seen execs, which I've had to do myself, whether it is sometimes telling somebody that you do not have a job for XYZ reasons, or it is that this particular project, which is a moonshot project, is not going to be viable anymore, and we're going to be doing something else, and we understand that somebody has put their heart and soul into it, but it's just brutal honesty. There's no point of going around the bush and not being direct. So that is one thing which has always held us instead. And building on what Pujarani was saying, the fact that those town halls happen and the founders are just on a pedestal like this and they're answerable to any question from any employee across the world makes, while it's hard, it has also built a set of expectations. So people also expect that honesty. So I think at some level, people know that if a difficult decision has to be made, they'll be told transparently, number one. They'll be explained the rationale for it. And it'll be managed in the most sensitive and caring way that is possible, right, in a scenario. So I think overall we've been managed that at, hopefully well. I just wanted to add on the previous question on culture as well, and actually building on, again, what Guruji spoke about in the last session. He spoke about drive, and for those of you who are not familiar, there are three elements in that, that what really drives people. And why I want to speak about that is because of the millennial nature of our organization and how our culture has been built. So the three elements are around autonomy, mastery, and the big word purpose. Autonomy is nothing but having the control over the team that I work with, the time that I invest, the techniques that I use to do my work. That's a different way of talking about freedom. And we gave some examples of how we built freedom into our workplace. Mastery. Mastery is the inherent desire of human beings to become good at something, to become a master at something. And I think in our organization, we've put in a lot of effort to build policies and programs at an HR level, which help people transition from one role to another, which help people without having to invest any additional money, etc., do projects in other teams, etc., so that I can become a master at what I want to do. And purpose, I think Guruji spoke himself a lot, but one thing which binds in Mobi as well is this continuous communication around shared purpose about what our organization is about. So I think these three dimensions have also shaped and influenced our culture and has helped our decision making as well. Not maybe directly or thoughtfully, but when you reflect on it, it has followed those principles.
Very interesting. And it resonates with me very well because I think I find that in most technology organizations, those three things is what people look for. And I think you can hear the passion that brings out in the three of you. Before we open the floor to questions from the floor, if there are any, if there's one thing you would like to, and I'll leave it to you, who wants to start, who wants to stop, and who wants to continue. So one each, if there was something one of you would like to start in Mobi which is not being done, stop which is not being done, and continue, what would it be?
Continue is the easy one.
Who'd like to go first?
So I'd like to go first. So we are currently, running Great Place to Work survey in our organization to a few people, and I'm one of the ones who, anyways, has to answer this. But for me, specifically in terms of starting, I think within InMobi there are a lot of advocates at the company about the work that we do, about how passionate they are. But I've noticed it's not just an InMobi thing, but it's across companies. You don't find a lot of advocates out there actually talking about your culture, actually talking about your company. And I think it's not just about InMobi. I just like to see so many more employees from all companies actually doing that. We have great sharing when it happens about news, but a greater part of our aspect of our jobs and the space that we spend time, and we don't really share that and how happy we are. I just want people to share that more. It's not just about InMobi, I think it's about every other company also.
You see it here on the stage, so I'm sure there are many more people who will do that as well. Stop and continue is left.
I'll talk about continue one thing.
Leaving the difficult question for me.
Yeah. I think one thing which has got us to where we are is resilience and being thick-skinned when it's necessary. And I just know that it's absolutely critical for all of us to continue being that, because the tough times are not over for the startup ecosystem, for our business. It is cyclical in nature, and more tough times are going to come. So I think I just want all of us to be, as an organization, to become even far more resilient than what we are today. So
we stop at nothing. So yeah, I think the organization's doing brilliantly. We shouldn't even think of stopping anything absolutely. What we should, or maybe the perception that should stop about InMobi is that it's just another advertising company. No, it's not. It's a product-driven, analytical company which is going great guns, and we should go for the kill.
Excellent. Well, I wish you all the very best. I'm going to open Any questions that are there on the floor? Otherwise, I think there's somebody out there. I'm not sure if there's a mic somewhere. Could you raise your hand again, please? Somebody will come up to you. Or maybe you just have to project. Maybe you'll just want to speak loudly and.
Yes.
So the question was, yeah, why don't you repeat that? There it is. There's a mic there. Thank you.
Yeah, am I audible now? I just want to understand, before giving what I call freedom and autonomy, should we wait for the maturity of the employee, or by giving autonomy and freedom, you achieve the maturity of the employee? How do we do it?
I'll take this. I think our experience is that we've given freedom from day one, and we've grown and matured together. So our experience is give freedom from day one. We also have a very, very young workforce. With millennials, giving that freedom is, I think, essential. And it has worked for us. That doesn't mean that sometimes we don't make mistakes, but there are checks and balances to address mistakes and to correct them, course correct very quickly. But at a fundamental level, we need to give freedom from day one. That's been our experience, at least.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So my question is slightly related to the question from the gentleman over here. With all this autonomy and all this freedom that you give people, isn't integrity and ethics and knowing people's integrity and ethics a very important thing to do? And if it is, how would you sort of assess it, or how would you ensure that your employees have that ethic?
I think, when you're looking at creating any organization or any company, and especially one that gives so much of freedom, you've got to believe and trust your people. So the core ingredient, the core active ingredient that is maybe not visible, you can't really have a test for it at the time of hiring somebody, right, is trust. Do you trust your people? And we wouldn't do something if we don't trust our people. The fact that we can do so much, the fact that we don't have these rules, the fact that we don't have a lot of practices or processes is because we trust our people. Now, you could either take that trust and abuse it, right? Or you could take that trust and benefit from it. And our experience is that when you give it out to folks, there might be 99% of the people who don't abuse it because they actually really absorb this trust and really believe that that's the reason that makes them stay. That's the reason that gives them meaning in their jobs. That's the like Supriya said, gives them mastery and purpose. But clearly there will be always some folks who may not use it the right way. But our objective is never to police that, because the moment you do policing, right, you're doing that for the remaining 99% as well.
So, just and to build on that, we used to have at one point of time very detailed, for example, travel policy, etc. And again, the founders really pushed back, Naveen himself, and we sort of reduced that and said, it's now a sort of a one-line policy. It says, spend money as you would your own. And this is a fact that after we did that, our expenses, it's not that they increased significantly or anything, it was broadly the same. And therefore, our philosophy became that don't make policies to penalize 95% of people who anyway follow policies. There will be 5% of people who don't. Put in place checks and balances and methods to address that. If somebody makes a mistake, you need to address it head on. If they're not a fit for the organization, they need to move on. Address that 5% instead of creating all these policies for 95% of people who anyway, because of the trust that we put in them, don't actually go outside these or whatever, not very clearly defined boundaries.
I think tomorrow's organization, without transparency and flexibility, I see that in my employer. You can't build the trust that is needed. So, that the way of managing, I think for the larger people, assuming that they're all, there's a theory about giving people an A and then letting them work their way downwards. So it sounds like that to me. If there's any other questions, otherwise we will pass the mic to the gentleman over there.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have one question that ideally, from an organizational perspective, an employee should work entirely objectively towards a common purpose, right? Without keeping his emotions involved in the work that is given. However, when you said that sometimes people put their heart and soul into a task, but due to some factors which are not entirely in organization's hands or someone else's hand, the task still fails. So, do you have a process or a system in place to counsel such employees in case, because a person who has put in heart and soul will get attached to the task that he did. So as a result, there might be something inside his mind that he might feel that, okay, I'm not being acknowledged for my hard work. So do you have something in place to counsel such a person in case such an event happens?
So I was counseled because I was the person who created this long draft of the travel policy, right? So I spent a lot of time, I did a lot of benchmarking, spoke to multiple organizations, came up with this 22-page draft, but, obviously, as Supriya said, dozens of countries, 14 plus countries, knew every hotel, knew everything out there. And I didn't see it go through, right? And I was distraught because it takes a lot of time to do this. I thought that was the purpose, right? But very clearly, I think what happened is that the entire exec team, and when I'm citing this example, it's not just about me, it's about any employee who goes through the same kind of situation. The people who are closest to the individual or closest to that particular product or experience are the ones who counsel the person, saying that this is the purpose, this is why it has changed. We know you didn't know this, but this is the way we want to take it forward. This is why it's important. This is the new question paper, or this is the new canvas that we are going after. And I think that is important because it's not about getting wedded to what you've created. It's about understanding and being adaptable to what the organization wants. And I think that's what we've engineered in everybody, or we are trying to engineer in people who reach a point where they think they have failed, right? But in fact, it just gives them another canvas to succeed on. It's happened to me, it's happened to a bunch of us at InMobi, it's happened to Pujani, it's happened to Supriya as well. But the fact is that the real counselors in your organization cannot be somebody outside. It's going to be the people inside. In my case, it was the exec team. In the case of some other individuals, their own immediate manager or HR, right? But what we've seen is that the people at InMobi are your closest counselors, and they are the ones who help you get back, to what you can actually do with your potential.
I'll add to that. During my stint in InMobi, I've seen a few products not take off. But the execs, the managers, they recognize the commitment of the individuals involved in executing that project. And those individuals have been given, different streams of work altogether. So what InMobi invests in is not just the skill set, but also the attitude. And I think Supriya is a great example because she herself did 10 plus years of HR before moving into a business role. Because, she just wanted to explore. And InMobi gave her every opportunity to do so. Sorry, Supriya, I just wanted to throw that example. And so I think it's not just the immediate reward, it's also about having that foresight and driving your employees to do more for the organization.
I think the mark of an entrepreneur is the ability to pivot and sort of shift towards where the opportunities of value and lie and stay true while still staying true to your purpose. I think we tend to think about that more at the organizational level. I guess it's just harder to feel it, make that happen for oneself, and I think that's some trait that possibly is, marks the true spirit of an entrepreneur. I'm not sure how we're doing on time, but otherwise we will continue with questions, or we will wrap. I'm getting the signal for one last question behind my back, so gentlemen, please go ahead.
So I run an executive search firm, and we have been implementing these practices in our organization, right? We have been giving people full authority to do whatever they think fit in a situation, and the results we are getting are phenomenal. Just letting them do what they think correct is much more than whatever we could imagine that they need to do. So I think the way the world is going to go forward is self-managed teams. We unleash the power of people, let them do what they think is correct. If you're also a human being, they're also a human being, right? So what's the big difference? Everything else is man-made. So I think this is truly the way to go, and InMobi is a great example.
I think
Thank
there's
you.
another innovation that we are doing out here, and Supriya also can pitch in, and so can you. I think we are converting our big, large organization. We are about 900 people. We are trying to convert that into a much smaller, nimbler organization. So we have got pods where we have people from different functions operating on one particular project or purpose. And we are doing this. It started off in small buckets now, but hopefully over the next year, we plan to apply this at scale so that we operate as a very, very small, nimble company, even as we grow, right?
Well, we wish you the best on your journey. Thank you for sharing. It's truly inspiring. I'm sure Kevin will be more than happy to host all of us at the InMobi office
Absolutely.
soon.
Absolutely.
But
Most
thank you
welcome.
all for coming here, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prithvi.
Thank you very much, panelists. I'll just request you to just hold on for a moment. If I could have the slides on of the contribution. Again, we can see it there. So, dear panelists, we've kind of done away with very large mementos. So we do have a small little memento for you at the end of this. But the money that would otherwise go into a memento is now being given to a charity. And these are the two girls to whom the education would be helped. Yeah, thank you very much. Could we have a round of applause, please? Thank you very much. Could I request Mali sir to please come up on stage? We do have a few small mementos. Kevin, just a minute. Sir, request you to please. Slightly louder round of applause. Thank you, sir.